In part 2 of our complete story recap of The Last of Us, we spent some time looking at Joel and Ellie's run-ins with the Hunters. We left off as Henry put down an infected Sam, before turning the gun on himself in desperation and, with nothing else to live for, choosing to opt out. In part 3, we will follow Joel and Ellie as they make their way to Jackson County to meet up with Tommy, and so much more. After Joel and Ellie's run-in with a group of bandits known as the Hunters and the deaths of Henry and Sam, The Last of Us skips forward in time a little bit, moving from summer of the year 2033 into fall. Joel and Ellie's journey to Jackson County has progressed quite well in the time that has lapsed. In fact, when the story picks up again, they've almost arrived at their destination. As they make their way across a dam, we learn that Joel has, in a sense, all but forbidden Ellie from speaking about Henry and Sam, and it doesn't take a psychologist to see that this is just how Joel chooses to cope with his losses now. He doesn't want to speak about the two brothers. Back in Boston after Tessa's death, he'd very firmly told Ellie never to bring her up again. Hell, he doesn't even mention Sarah, his own daughter, anymore. Like everyone else who lives, Joel's losses keeps piling up, and he clearly sees no better way to deal with them. He hasn't lost everything, though, with his brother Tommy still alive. But while he is still alive, the two of them haven't seen each other in years, and Joel admits to Ellie that their relationship is more than just a little complicated. And it doesn't take very long to see just why that's the case either. Joel and Ellie soon come across a gated compound in the area around the dam, a hydroelectricity plant that has been walled off and is being manned by people armed with guns. As these guards sight the two wanderers moving in their direction, they point their weapons at them, telling them to turn around and leave. As it turns out, though, these people belong to Tommy, who's brought a group of his men from Jackson County to fix the hydroelectricity plant in order to provide electricity for his town. He tells the guards to stand down and brings Joel and Ellie inside. He introduces them to Maria, the woman who is essentially in charge of his group, and as it turns out, is also his wife. After these introductions, Maria takes Ellie with her to get some food, while Tommy gives Joel a tour of the plant. Eventually, as the tour comes to an end, the two estranged brothers find themselves alone, and they finally sit down for a much-needed and long overdue conversation. It is at this point that we learn exactly why Joel and Tommy's relationship has deteriorated as badly as it has. After the outbreak and the death of Sarah, Joel quickly learned that having a moral compass was a sure-shot way of getting yourself killed in this new and dangerous world he had found himself in. In the earlier years, when he and Tommy were still together, we learned in vague and nondescript terms that Joel did a lot of horrible stuff to keep the two of them alive, and that Tommy had been given no choice but to do the same. Eventually, he grew disillusioned by the brutal and violent ways of his brother, and it was this disillusionment that pushed him away from Joel and led him to join the Fireflies. Sure, eventually he did end up leaving the Fireflies too, but it had always been pretty clear that unlike his brother, Tommy was determined not to let the apocalypse turn him into an unrecognizable monster. But such things are par for the course in a world such as this one, and the two brothers don't waste much time going into detail about what happened. Joel gets to the point rather quickly. He tells Tommy about Ellie, that she is actually immune to the cordyceps infection, that her immunity could be the key to humanity's salvation, and that she needs to be delivered to the Firefly scientist for that purpose. He asks Tommy to take Ellie with her and deliver her to the Fireflies, telling him that he can collect the payment from Marlene once he does so. Tommy has no intentions of leaving, however. He tells Joel that he hasn't been with the Fireflies for a long time now, and that he has a life and a family that he can't just abandon at the drop of a hat. Things start heating up between the two brothers, but just as an argument is about to break out, they're cut short as a group of bandits falls upon the compound. Instinct kicks in for both of them, and deciding to save the argument for later, Joel and Tommy both grab their weapons and get to work. They make short work of the bandits, sweeping through the entire compound and, with the help of Tommy's own men, killing all of the attackers with precision and skill. After the attack, as they stand out in the yard measuring their losses, Tommy tells Joel and Maria that he's changed his mind and that he is indeed going to deliver Ellie to the Fireflies. Maria tries to talk him out of it, telling him that he can't just abandon all of the people who are counting on him, herself included, but Tommy refuses to budge. Maria's anger, however, turns out to be the least of their worries. It turns out that Ellie was listening in on their conversation, and when she hears that Joel is looking to leave her and hand her over to Tommy, she gets on a horse, and yes, Tommy's people have a few horses as well, and takes off into the woods outside. As soon as they realize that Ellie is gone, Joel and Tommy grab their own horses and go out looking for her. As they follow her tracks, they come across even more bandits in the woods. After several fights and encounters with the bandits, Joel and Tommy finally spot Ellie's horse hitched to a post of an abandoned house. The two of them go in, and once Joel finds Ellie in one of the rooms upstairs, she tells him why she left. She accuses Joel of wanting to get rid of her, saying that it was always his plan to dump her off on Tommy and then leave. Joel responds by saying that she would be much safer with Tommy, but at this point, it becomes pretty clear what he's really doing to both us, the players, and Ellie. She's taking none of his crap anymore. She tells Joel point blank that she is not Joel's daughter, implying that he doesn't have to be afraid of losing her the way that he lost Sarah. The mention of his long-dead daughter clearly doesn't sit well with Joel, though. He tells Ellie that she is indeed not his daughter, and that as such, she is not his responsibility. In no vague terms, Joel tells Ellie that this is happening, that she is going with Tommy, and that they're going their own separate ways. Their conversation is soon cut short, as a group of bandits invades the house that they're in, forcing them to deal with the situation at hand. Eventually, the three of them head back to the plant, but by the time they arrive, Joel's burst of anger has subsided, and he's had a change of heart. He and Ellie have faced much together in the few months that they've been in each other's company, and as much as they may want to deny it, there's no doubting that he's developed an attachment to the young girl. He tells Tommy that he's going to stay with Ellie and make sure that she gets to the Fireflies safe and sound. Tommy tells them that the Fireflies have a lab in the University of Eastern Colorado, at which point Joel and Ellie say their goodbyes, take one of Tommy's horses, and leave. They make it to the university in no time, but things aren't looking good. As Joel and Ellie start looking through the buildings on the campus, they come to the realization that the Fireflies aren't there anymore, and that what was once their lab has probably ended up abandoned for a long time. They start looking for clues as to where the Fireflies may have gone and eventually find a tape recording. It turns out that the remaining Fireflies have all fled to St. Mary's Hospital all the way over in Salt Lake City. So, of course, that is where Joel and Ellie are headed next, but things quickly take a dark turn before they can decide on their next course of action. As they're about to leave the university campus, they spot another group of survivors heading in their direction, and in The Last of Us, that is never a good thing. This is because, predictably enough, those survivors proceed to attack them. The next portion of the game tasks the players with finding their way out of the university grounds, employing either stealth or brute force, or both, to fight their way through the attackers. Up until this point, both Joel and Ellie have been very lucky in such situations, or in their encounters with the infected. Having narrowly escaped from several scenarios which ordinarily would have meant certain death, that luck, unfortunately enough, has to run out at some point, and that is exactly what happens. Joel gets taken by surprise as one of the attackers lunges at him from nowhere, and in the ensuing struggle, the two of them fall down from 2 stories up. The attacker dies, but Joel sustains serious damage. As he hits the ground, he is impaled through the stomach with a metal beam. Heavily injured and losing a lot of blood, Joel is on the verge of passing out, but somehow he manages to cling on to consciousness with Ellie's help. The two of them flee from the university grounds even as they're being pursued by their attackers, and at the end of a particularly intense sequence, they manage to make it back to where they had hitched their horse. Joel and Ellie ride away from the university, and a while later, Ellie declares that, at least for now, they seem to be safe. Joel, however, can no longer hold on. He passes out, unable to cope with his injury, leaving Ellie alone, helpless, and clueless. At this point, The Last of Us jumps forward in time once again, picking things up in the middle of winter. It is during this skipped period of time that Left Behind takes place, and while most of it revolves around Ellie scrambling to get a gravely injured Joel to safety, the bulk of the DLC portrays past events in Ellie's life, back in Boston before she met Joel and Tess. So before we continue recapping the story of The Last of Us, let's pause briefly and take a look at the flashbacks portrayed in Left Behind. Back in Boston, Ellie had a friend named Riley, a girl she shared a very special relationship with. 3 weeks before the events of The Last of Us, Riley and Ellie go through something monumentous and devastating. It starts as an innocent trip to an abandoned shopping mall, the place where the two of them first met. Riley, as it turns out, has her own reasons for bringing Ellie back here. She tells her that she's joined the Fireflies, and that she's been assigned to another group based in another city. She tells Ellie that she's soon about to leave, and that she wanted to spend one last great evening with her before that. Heartbreak follows, predictably enough. The two of them unwittingly attract the attention of a number of runners in the area, and though they manage to escape, they both get bitten, doomed to lose their minds to the infection. They decide that they're going to wait it out, that they're going to let the infection take them both over, being all poetic and lose their minds together, as Ellie puts it later in the game. Of course, we know how that turns out. The bite has no effect on Ellie whatsoever, thanks to her immunity, which, at that point, she was totally unaware of. Riley, however, has no such gift. The flashbacks in Left Behind DLC end at this heart-wrenching juncture. We pick up the main story once again, at a point where Joel and Ellie are more vulnerable than we have ever seen. With Joel's injury constantly getting worse, he is showing no signs of regaining consciousness, and Ellie is barely equipped to deal with the situation. When the game story picks up, the year has sped past fall and deep into the snowy white heart of winter. And that's it for part 3. In the fourth and final part of our full story recap of The Last of Us, we're going to recount the monumentous and memorable moments of the rest of the game. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.